You want flashes from the young kids? That was more than a flash. Isaiah Collier with a burst and a game winner and a career night. We're talking about it next. Plus, Will Hardy plea for the importance of winning next on Locked on Jazz. Bum 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 bum.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. We are free and available on all podcasting apps as well as on YouTube. So thank you very much for tuning in. On today's show, we will Trends Monday like we always do. And for those, the Jazz are not trending like five other teams. We'll talk about that. Will Hardy, I thought, had an interesting moment of his press conference where I thought he really pleaded for the importance of winning. And we'll let you hear that. You can decide whether you thought it was kind of as emotional as I did with him last night. But let's start with the 2-game weekend by Isaiah Collier and the rookie from USC's game winner and standout night, 23.7 rebounds and 7 assists. To the everydayers out there, thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen. I cannot thank you enough for your commitment and everything you've done for us. Love to have you aboard. Thanks so much. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code Locked on NBA for $20 off your first purchase. So Isaiah Collier, over the weekend, puts together 2 bona fide great ball games and gives the Jazz a nice little bounce and this is why it was a stunner when he slipped in the draft. The item that made him slip in the draft at 29th is his shooting. That has turned out to be a legitimate concern. And he made 3 shots last night, which I think then changed the whole atmosphere of his night. That's the biggest thing that's jumped out to me in Collier. Is on these nights in which he makes some shots, it's interesting to me on how much he suddenly kind of gets a bounce and a swagger to who he is that you didn't see earlier in the game, or you don't see all the time when he's playing these shortened minutes playing behind Keontae. I'm not sure he's ever done this before. Played 30 minutes a night at USC. Was one of the number 1 high school players in the country. Like, he wasn't sitting out. He wasn't playing 15 minutes a night. I don't think he's entirely figured out how to get a swagger in 15 minutes a night. But what we are seeing in some of these games when he plays extended minutes, like we saw last night when he played 37, and against Phoenix, I thought he was okay with 26, and 33 against Miami, and 26 against Atlanta. He's now done this for 4, 5, 6 games in a row with Keontae out. Is we're beginning to see him get a rhythm, have a consistency to his contribution, and be able to kind of play through the night. Now, his 3-point shooting last night, he goes 3 of 6, and it changes everything. I mean, he literally goes, it's like he suddenly took 16 shots last night. He had taken 5, 5, 5, and 6 in the 3 games before, with a level of reluctancy to shooting the ball. And actually, the other night when he missed in Phoenix, I thought his shot looked much better. I actually had a play-by-play call where I said that. It was rattling around and popping out rather than being, wildly offline. And that's going to still be the key. We're going to run through all of his strengths and how exciting. There's a bunch of stuff to it. And give him time, right? We're seeing it with Walker's doing things in year 3, couldn't have done in year 1 and 2. Hopefully with Isaiah, that's the shot. But some of the other things we're seeing night in and night out from Isaiah are pretty outstanding. His last 5 games, he has 6, 9, 9, 8, and 7 assists. His rebounding seems to be a nose for the ball and a competitiveness that's real. 5, 6, 3, 3, 7. Almost all of them on the defensive end. Guards that rebound are really important. So we're seeing a bunch of stuff out of him that's really, really exciting. And that play late, that game winner is big time. Turn the corner, leave the dribble out in front in a tough situation, and make that play. That's a big time play from a kid. And this has been throwing into the deep end, right? I mean, he starts playing a little extra minutes against Orlando. He goes 1 of 8 against Atlanta. He goes 1 of 6. Like, he's in the deep end. And he's kind of working himself through to get to shore right now and get himself comfortable, and it's impressive to see. So, and he's got a lot of stuff, right? I mean, he's got a burst, and he plays with a pace, and he's got guts, and he's got strength. So a lot of pieces in there, most of which are unteachable. And the question is whether the shooting's teachable. I generally am not the biggest believer in that. I will also point out that on the draft, the threshold that I have found by which you're under that threshold, you probably never become a good shooter. Isaiah was not under that threshold. His shooting wasn't great at USC, but he was actually not under the red flag threshold that Ron Holland and I think Bazulius and Stephen Castle were. So that's, he shot 34% from three. And if you remember his year last year in college, in the second half of the season, he comes back from an injury and he actually shoots it okay. Now, we've seen with Cody Williams also that college shooting is completely different than pro shooting. But if I remember correctly, his last 11 games after the injury, he scores 18 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. He shoots 47% from the field and 38% from three. So that there probably is a redo that has to be done to that shot. But there are times when he's comfortable with it and it goes in. And so that was pretty great last night. I mean, the Jazz definitely, cleared the deck last night. And you're starting Micah Potter and playing the 10 guys you played last night. I would argue that for the Jazz last night, there were 2 guys to that lineup. Well, Colin Sexton, I would say there was one guy in the Jazz lineup last night that has established himself as a set NBA rotation player. I think Sensabaugh's on the verge of it. He continues to shoot it well and play well. And there's other guys that maybe will get there. But as of right now, the only guy that was on our roster that played last night that's a regular rotation player in the NBA is Colin Sexton. And so Collier had that window was open and he grabbed it. It was pretty great. 37 minutes. And the other one, I said this on Postcast last night. I do think contextually this is important when you start to kind of look at these nights. Like last night, our guys should have played well. Right? Like Brooklyn's not playing NBA rotation players either. Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton were their NBA rotation players last night. But Zaire Williams hasn't proven it. Noah Clowney hasn't proven it. Keon Johnson certainly hasn't proven it. It's bounced around 3 times now. Sharp, Martin, Wilson, Beekman. Those guys haven't proven that they are NBA rotation players. So Isaiah Collier, while inexperienced, should have a good night last night. You'd like to see Kyle Filipowski have a good night last night. You'd like to see Cody Williams have a good night last night. Generally, our guys did. But that was a pretty even playing field. There weren't 10-year vets on the floor. There weren't 5-time All-Stars on the floor. There weren't $100 million players who've earned themselves their $100 million by being a rotation player for 10 years on the floor last night. So that was a night where guys should have good games. I thought Will Hardy made an interesting plea to everyone out there about the importance of winning games. Now, it's clear where we are. We're in the midst of a whole group that's mesmerized by this year's draft and trying to rebuild. And it's an interesting circumstance because there's 6 teams doing it. And there aren't 6 players. And so the race is real. But I thought Will Hardy had an interesting comment in postgame. I thought the kind of way he delivered it was worth sharing. We'll do that next when we come back on Locked On Jazz, when we continue on Locked On Jazz. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Hyundai lineup of cars, unprecedented. From the Palisade with the 3 rows of seating, and also now the Santa Cruz with 3 rows of seating for the bigger SUV, to the Kona, to the Tucson, to the sedans, the Elantra and the Sonata, and then the electric cars, the Ioniq 5 and Ioniq 6. Award-winning across the board every single time, and more exciting things are coming from Hyundai if you've been following the world and the market out there. Right now, the 2025 Hyundai Tucson is 2.49% by the way, for 60 months, so that's pretty great. All sorts of great deals going on at Murdoch Hyundai. So stop by and visit. If you're going to, please email me first at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com to give you your VIP meeting. Today's show is also brought to you by the Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball coach, this is your chance to step into the shoes. In your Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players to hiring coaches to overseeing training camps, handling nil deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays, set your strategy the way you do affects not just this season, but every season. It's literally like all the board games I used to play as a kid. It's super awesome. It gets you to feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. So grab on it right now. Here's your special offer from Locked On NBA listeners and Locked On Jazz listeners. Use the code Locked On CBB. That's Locked On CBB, all caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's a perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. Download Ultimate College Basketball HC. Just visit the ultimate-cbb.com and look it up at the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And there's the daily newsletter at lockedondaily.com. All right. You decide. I thought, sometimes I don't get, let me stop the share and make sure I have, sometimes to make sure, also share tab audio turned on. Okay. You should be able to get this. All right. Here's Will Hardy last night. And I thought there's just like a little pause. And then I just thought he shared what is an important perspective for us who are watching this. Understand that in the midst of developing talent, you are trying to get the best draft pick possible so that you can get a marquee player. And here's what Will had to say.
Losing is hard. Losing can...
Let me back it up for 1 second. Start a little earlier than I thought. He has this big pause right before he says it. That's actually what struck me. Here, let me back up 1 second, Will. I find Will incredibly measured every single night. And occasionally there's the outburst in Portland 2 years ago or last year. There's one the year before. And I thought this had a little passion and authenticity to it.
Losing is hard. Losing can wear on people's desire to do the things that aren't fun, to do the hard things, and to stick together and to make it about the group. And I cannot emphasize enough that our team has, and that group of guys continues to maintain the spirit of a team. Like, you go in our locker room, it feels like a team. You watch the guys interact together, it feels like a team. And I never want them to lose that. So I'm really, really proud of them. I
think there's two things here that are really interesting. And let's go backwards first and take the last piece. And that is a tribute to the John Collins and the Colin Sextons and the Jordan Clarksons and the Patty Mills and the veterans for maintaining a presence and an understanding of all that's going on around them, and to keep an atmosphere where guys want to go to work. You know, we can all sit here and talk about how much money they make and this and that, but like, they're still going to work every day, and it can become burdensome to walk into that practice facility. It's why the Jazz practice facility, which is so beautiful and so gorgeous, is so important to who they are. In fact, that practice facility and how it was built under Quinn and Dennis might be part of the reason why that spirit is still there. Because of the fact it's a great place to be. They spend time together. It's built with intention to make sure they want to spend time together. And so you keep this camaraderie. That could be, frankly, could be part of it. And so I think that second comment is important and is a tribute to them. Like, we can sit there and I can look at my, of the two comments on my timeline that aren't robots on X, it's all about we can't even tank right. like, I got it. It's a funky, weird season. And I've never been part of something like this. And it's only going to accelerate because there are 7 teams, maybe 6, depending on what New Orleans is doing. There are 7 teams right now that are making a somewhat conscious effort to, let's call it, develop players as the priority over winning basketball games. Or even the argument could be said in some cases, the priority is to put yourself in best draft position, not to win basketball games. So there's too many teams, right? This is a problem. There's too many teams doing this. And so suddenly every game matters a great deal toward this quest. And we're 40 games left in the season. And it, like, yeah, if you're a huge pro tank guy, beating Brooklyn isn't great. Beating Charlotte the next night is not great. Beating New Orleans the next 2 nights isn't great. So it's really funky. And so I do think we have to hear what Will just said. And that is that, like, without some wins and some credible, positive feedback, which is what a win is, you at some point lose the ability to teach, and you lose the ability to have guys work, and you lose the ability to ask your guys to do the hard things. And then when you lose that ability, and the hard things are being unselfish and playing as a team, and then when you lose that, you then also lose what he's giving his team such credit for, which is they still want to come to work, and they're still focused, and they're still engaged, and they're still trying to improve, and then it just becomes whatever it is. And honestly, it's so wacky that maybe that's actually fine. Right? Like, if you're Washington and you're looking at it, and like the chances are that very few of your guys are going to be a part of your program by the time, like, then who cares? And maybe, for all these teams are doing this. Maybe very few of these guys are going to be a part of the program when you're winning, and so you've rebuilt your culture and it doesn't matter. So I'm not the biggest believer in the idea that if you lose a bunch of games, you destroy the culture that's been built for years. That does not resonate as accurate with me. It sounds great. It doesn't resonate as accurate or truthful. But what Will Hardy said did resonate to me, which is, hey, and maybe this is just a plea as a head coach, but like, hey, we've got a massive journey we're on, and it's super long and really tiring. And I'm asking these guys to do hard things, play together, play a system. I'm asking the veterans to be supportive of the young guys. And they're doing it, and it's awesome. And let's appreciate that they are doing it. And understand that, like, a win matters in this process. That losing tears away at the fabric of getting your team to play in the manner you want them to play. And so, yep, you're right. Andy Larson's documented this well in his triple team. I think at 5th, we're likely to be 7th. And it feels, yeah, I'm with you. I get it. Like, if we're going to do this, do it. Problem is there's 7 other people doing it at the same time, which means that you really have to really do it. And that's where I think it's hard for a head coach to hold a group together, play the game the right way, play with effort, put out a pretty good product. I've had a good week. We're getting a good product right now. We're seeing improvement. We're seeing individual player improvement. We're seeing close games. We're seeing battles. We're seeing guys get opportunities. We're seeing Bryce Sensabaugh run off Lowry Markkanen's play last night for a 3. There's a lot of positive things going on. And it might be because they're interspersing some wins, which in the realm of trying to make sure you increase the odds for your pick as best seems contradictory. It's craziness. All right, let's look at league trends when we continue here on Locked on Jazz. A Monday trends look, as we always do. here on the program. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. They're the official ticketing app of Locked On. Why Game Time? Well, let me give you the various reasons. Number one is because events are the moments that you bring and you remember. And so Game Time wants to get you to those events with as little hassle as possible. And the best way they're doing it now is with Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all of the fluff to show you an incredible deal on great seats so you don't have to waste time for searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming concert. My wife's birthday soon. And using the Game Time app with Game Time Picks, I found pretty darn good deals. And I think I've got her a fabulous birthday present. So that was because Super Deal was there offering great seats at unbeatable prices, plus the app-in pricing. Total cost up front, no surprises at checkout. Take out the guesswork of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for just over $20. For just $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's edition of Locked On Jazz is also brought to you by Open Phone. That's right. Open Phone. Running a small business takes a lot of hats in the process. Trust me, I'm aware of this. I personally was running a small business for a long time until we luckily sold it, and then I didn't have to do it anymore. That's a side note, but we're still somewhat of a small business in the midst of it, and so there's always this piece and that piece and those pieces. And so let me tell you more about Open Phone. Your personal phone becomes your business phone before you know it, and you're juggling customer calls all day and night. And as your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. That's where Open Phone comes in. It's the number one business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. For just $15 a month, 3 coffees, you can get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone. Open Phone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot or hundreds of others, and also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls, action items, in the second you hang up. And if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to the customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. Right now, Open Phone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's Openphone, OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA for $20 off your first 6 months. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. If you have an existing number with any other service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. Every Monday on Locked On Jazz, we like to give you the Trends Monday and look at what's happening in the league, where the teams are, all of those kind of things. Remind you that we have the daily newsletter as well for you. Sign up. Today you would get the exclusive Empty the Noggin from the weekend. So go to LockedOnDaily.com and then grab it and subscribe to Locked On Jazz and any other shows you want. All right. Last 10 games, hottest team in the NBA, interestingly, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Cavaliers had a bad loss last night. Both are 9-1. Then Boston, for all their struggles, still has a 9.1 differential. Denver is really interesting. They kind of have clicked back in. They're the 4th best overall team in the NBA the last 10 games, followed by Houston, New York, and then Indiana is 7-3. And maybe the biggest surprise is Detroit is 8th. So credit to Detroit. The run to the bottom is real. Listen to these numbers. Toronto is 1-9. They're minus 17 for 100 possessions. Washington is minus 12 for 100 possessions. Brooklyn is minus 10 per 100 possessions. Charlotte's minus 6. Portland's minus 6. The Jazz, by the way, over the last 10 games are plus 0.1. The Jazz are actually outscoring their opponents in the last 10 games. Hottest offense in the NBA continues to be Cleveland, but Denver is right behind them, followed by Boston, Oklahoma City, and Indiana's click back in. New York's right there. Jazz are 17th offensively in the last 10 games. Teams that can't score right now, Orlando without Franz Wagner and Paulo Banchero, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Clippers, Washington, Toronto, and then the Warriors interestingly. And then the Mavericks playing without Luka and Kyrie are sliding down here. Best defensive team in the NBA last 10 games. This is just crazy. Oklahoma City is 5 points better per 100 possessions than any other team in the NBA. They're 102.9. The second best is 107.9. The league average is 113. They're 10 points per 100 possessions better than the league average. I think it's amazing that we have the best offense and the best defense in the history of the game going on at the same time. Top 5 defenses are Thunder, Spurs, Magic, Bucks. It's really interesting. The Bucks are here. Heat and Clippers. Detroit's playing really good defense as well. Teams not defending: Toronto, Washington, Portland, Pelicans, and then the Atlanta Hawks. The Jazz defense, which has been 30th for 2 years, is 18th in the last 10 games. Let's go to the last 2 weeks, a little bit more recent trend. We do every Monday. What was your big takeaway on that one? I always try to give you the takeaway of one is that we're not anywhere near the other 6 teams that are working toward the bottom of the standings would actually be my biggest takeaway of this whole thing. My second biggest takeaway the last 2 weeks would be Indiana and Detroit and how good they've been, surprisingly. Warriors offense really struggling would jump out to me. And then the Thunder defense would be the things that I thought were the biggest things to take with you on that. Let's look at the last 2 weeks and what we see coming. This one takes out blowout time just to make sure that, and the number 1 team in the league is Oklahoma City, followed by Indiana last 2 weeks, 6-1. Then Denver, and then Sacramento, who has not lost under Doug Christie, 7-0. And Detroit. So that's super interesting. That obviously Sacramento, not surprised to see them there, but Detroit's 15th offensively and 2nd defensively. Teams that are in the bottom: Toronto -16, Brooklyn -15, Washington -14, Atlanta -13, Clippers -10, and the Warriors -6. Jazz are plus 0.9 and 3 and 5 in their last 2 weeks. Offense: Indiana's the number 1 offense in the NBA the last 2 weeks. That's a huge takeaway. Denver's number 2, Cleveland 3, Oklahoma City 4, Houston 5. That's crazy because they're known for their defense and they're actually winning with their offense right now. They're 18th defensively in the last 2 weeks. They're actually winning with their offense. Teams that can't score right now are Charlotte, Brooklyn, Clippers, Orlando, and Washington. On the defensive side of things, Oklahoma City, as we just talked about, continues. Detroit is number 2 defensively in that time period. Indiana, Sacramento, and Charlotte, number 5 defensively, surprising. Orlando 6th. Teams not defending: Toronto, Atlanta, Washington, Los Angeles Lakers 27th. Have only played 5 games. Brooklyn, New Orleans, and then Memphis has really slipped on the defensive end. So some interesting takeaways always are. I always feel like we're a little ahead of it. When we do Trends Monday, I actually think we tip off some things a little earlier than everyone else. By doing that. That's why I do it every Monday. I think it actually has really interesting, makes you watch the league better, understand what's going on. Hopefully it gives you perspective where the Jazz are. And maybe the biggest takeaway from the Jazz is if you're on Team Tank, we're not bad enough. Like we're just not bad enough for this. And it's an interesting discussion amongst yourselves about what your thoughts on that are. Jazz, get 2 days off, play Charlotte on Wednesday. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Have a great one. Talk to you soon. This has been Locked On Jazz. We now send you to the first ever. Oh, by the way, follow me on all the socials at DLock09, any of the which you want. Newsletter, lockedondaily.com, and please follow or subscribe to the program if you've not done so already. I really appreciate that. We now send you over to the first ever national 24/7 channel on YouTube called Locked On NBA, and also check out Locked On NBA Game Night after all the games, every night, every game. It is Locked On NBA.